The wind did not arrive as a warning, but as a wall, a living force that erased the horizon and turned daylight into a roaring white darkness. And in that first terrifying hour of the great blizzard of 1890, the people of the plains believed nothing could survive it. Snow moved sideways like thrown sand. Temperatures dropped faster than fear could be spoken, and the land that had once promised opportunity suddenly felt like a grave waiting to be filled. In the middle of that frozen chaos, while neighbors prayed over collapsing barns and dying livestock, one woman stood quietly at the mouth of a hill, her breath steady, trusting a choice everyone had mocked her for. If you believe in silent heroes and second chances, take a moment now to like, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel. Stories like this live on because people like you still believe courage does not always shout. Her name was Margaret Whittaker, a woman of deep faith and stubborn resolve living in the heart of the United States, where land was earned through sweat and survival was never guaranteed. Years earlier, Margaret had married into a family that measured worth in appearances and tradition. They believed in tall barns, open fields, and doing things the way they had always been done. When Margaret began questioning those traditions, especially after losing animals to sudden winter storms, she was labeled difficult, impractical, and eventually ungrateful. The final fracture came when she proposed building an underground barn carved into a hillside, a shelter protected by earth itself. Laughter followed her words, then anger, then rejection. Her parents-in-law told her she was embarrassing the family, wasting money, and defying common sense. Before winter arrived, she was told to leave. Margaret left with little more than her Bible, her tools, and a small herd of horses that had become her responsibility and her comfort. With the little money she had saved, she bought a forgotten plot of land backed by a rocky hill, dismissed by others as useless. But Margaret saw something different. She saw shelter. She saw the way the earth held warmth, how caves stayed cool in summer and stable in winter. She remembered stories from her grandfather about animals surviving underground during harsh seasons. While others built upward, she chose to build inward. The work was brutal. She dug and reinforced, hauled stone and timber, carved stalls directly into packed earth. The underground barn slowly took shape, dark at first, then carefully lit, ventilated, and reinforced. She slept nearby, hands cracked and bleeding, praying each night that her strength would hold. Neighbors passed by and shook their heads. They called her underground barn crazy. They whispered that grief and pride had finally broken her mind. Margaret heard every word, and each one hardened her resolve. By late autumn, the barn was finished. Thick earth wrapped around it like a shield. The horses adapted quickly, calm and warm, their breaths steady even as frost coated the land above. Margaret felt peace there, a quiet sense that she had listened to something deeper than opinion. She did not know that history was about to test her faith on a scale no one alive had ever witnessed. The great blizzard came without mercy. One morning began mild, deceptive, and by afternoon the sky turned violent. Temperatures plunged so fast that moisture froze in midair. Snow buried fences in minutes. Wind screamed across the plains with enough force to knock grown men to the ground. Traditional barns collapsed under the weight, roofs caving in, animals freezing where they stood. Families huddled together, believing this storm was not meant to be survived. Margaret moved with purpose. She guided her horses into the underground barn and sealed the entrance carefully, leaving only the protected ventilation shaft she had planned months before. Inside, the temperature remained steady, the earth absorbing the shock of the cold. The horses lived. They stood together, warm, alive, while above them the world tore itself apart. The storm lasted days. When it finally loosened its grip, the land emerged broken and silent. People stepped out to find devastation everywhere. Livestock losses were catastrophic. Entire livelihoods had vanished under snowdrifts taller than houses. As survivors moved through the wreckage, word spread of something impossible. Margaret Whittaker's horses were alive. Every single one. Neighbors who had laughed now stood at the hill in stunned silence. They entered the underground barn and felt the warmth, saw the calm animals, smelled life where death had been expected. What they saw challenged everything they believed about strength and wisdom. Margaret did not gloat. She helped. She opened her shelter to injured animals. She shared what she had learned. Faith, she believed, was not proven by being right, but by serving when others were broken. If this story is touching your heart, please take a moment to engage with this video. Your support helps keep these forgotten stories alive. News of her underground barn spread beyond the valley. Farmers came from miles away to study it. Some apologized quietly. Others asked for guidance. Even her parents-in-law arrived one cold afternoon, their pride stripped away by loss. They saw the daughter-in-law they had cast out standing strong, while others mourned. They saw that what they had called foolish had saved lives. The shock in their faces was not just surprise, but regret. Margaret forgave them, not because they deserved it, but because forgiveness was the final freedom she had left to claim. She did not return to their home. She stayed on her land, expanding the underground shelter, helping reshape how the community prepared for the future. The plains would always be harsh, but they would never again underestimate quiet wisdom. Before the story ends, we have one special request. Please comment below and share what part of Margaret's journey moved you the most. Your words help others feel less alone. Years later, when the great blizzard of 1890 was spoken of in hushed tones, Margaret Whittaker's underground barn was remembered as more than a structure. It was remembered as proof that survival does not always follow tradition, that faith paired with courage can rewrite outcomes, and that sometimes the people the world calls crazy are the ones who see the storm coming first.